Let's finish the parable. Now his older son was in the field. Coming in from the field, he approached the house and heard music and dancing. He called one of the servants and asked what was going on. The servant replied, "Your brother has arrived, and your father has slaughtered the fattened calf because he received his son back safe and sound." Then the older son was furious and didn't want to enter in, but his father came out and begged him. He answered his father, "Look, I've served you all these years, and I never disobeyed your instruction. Yet you've never given me as much as a young goat so I could celebrate with my friends. But when this son of yours returned after gobbling up your estate on prostitutes, you slaughtered the fattened calf for him." Then his father said, "Son, you are always with me, and everything I have is yours. But we had to celebrate and be glad because this brother of yours was dead and is alive. He was lost and is found." A pastor was telling the children the story of the prodigal son. She had emphasized the fact that the older brother would not celebrate his younger brother's return. After going through the story, she asked, "Now, who was not happy that the younger brother came home?" There was silence. She asked again, "Can anybody tell me who was not celebrating the younger son coming home? Who wasn't happy about it?" Suddenly, a little boy said, I know, the fattened calf." Why did Jesus tell this story? The scribes and Pharisees were grumbling about lost people coming to Jesus. They said, "This fellow welcomes sinners and eats with them." Jesus responded by telling three parables: the parables of the lost sheep, the lost coin, and the lost son. Jesus says that when a person who has gone astray returns to God, there is rejoicing in heaven. But the scribes and Pharisees were not happy. Our story today would be better titled "The Loving Father" rather than "The Prodigal Son." One reason is that there are two sons in the story. And God is like the father in the story, a father who has compassion for his wayward son and patience with his older son. It's about God's grace. God wants those who have been faithful to be happy about those who have been unfaithful, but who come home to God. Let's think of the story in modern terms. A man in Central Florida owned orange groves and raised lots of cattle. He had two sons. Both sons grew up working on the farm. The older son graduated from the University of Florida with a double major in agriculture, operations and management, and animal science. He graduated and began applying what he learned to the family agribusiness, making it even more successful. He worked hard to make his father proud of him. The father wanted his younger son to major in citrus and horticulture science at Florida Southern College to help with that part of the farming. But the younger son was so bored, he switched majors 3 times and dropped out after a year and a half. The younger son returns to the farm. He feels he's always being compared to his perfect older brother. And his older brother is always bossing him around and criticizing him. He can't stand life on the farm anymore. After the umpteenth argument with his goody two-shoes brother, the younger son shouts in anger, I wish Dad were already dead. Then I'd take what's coming to me and I'd leave this place forever." Their father overhears the argument and his younger son's comments. He asks the younger, "Are you really that unhappy here?" Younger son's still shouting, "You bet I am. Give me my inheritance now. Give me what I'll get after you're gone. Then I'll be out of your hair for good." The father says sadly, "If you're that determined to leave, I'll give you your inheritance." The older son says, "No, you can't do that, Dad. What about our employees? We'd have to let half of them go and sell off half our land. And what about the livestock and the orange groves? The father tells the older son, it'll be all right. We'll still make it. The older brother persists. You can't listen to this spoiled brat. He only cares about himself. He doesn't care about you or our family. This farm has been in our family for generations. The father says, it's okay. It's clear the farm would be divided at my death, and your brother would sell off his land. Don't give in to him, Dad, the older son pleads. But the father sells half his land, half his orange harvest, half his livestock, half of his farm equipment, and he lets half of the employees go. Then he gives the younger son the cash. The young man is ecstatic. He grabs a suitcase and leaves without even saying goodbye. Drives to the Miami airport, where he buys a first-class seat to Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. Once he lands, he gets a taxi to a luxury car dealership and buys a new roadster. He puts a down payment on a penthouse apartment in Copacabana Beach. Within a few days, he has lots of friends and beautiful girls from Ipanema always at his side. He's having the time of his life. He couldn't be happier. However, before too long, his life starts to unravel. He loses his Porsche in a poker game. He runs out of money and falls deep into debt to one of the local drug lords. All his friends disappear. He can't make the payments on his penthouse apartment, and he's evicted. No one will hire him because he can't speak Portuguese, and he's a foreigner. He ends up living on the outskirts of a favela by the huge city garbage dump. He and others forage for edible scraps in the garbage. Nobody cares about him. Finally, he comes to his senses. He says to himself, I'm starving to death. Maybe Dad needs a hired hand on the farm. When I get home, I'll say, Dad, I'm sorry. I know I've disappointed you. I'm ashamed of myself. I'm not asking to be part of the family again. I just need a job and a place to stay. He stows away on a freighter bound for Miami. He hitchhikes up US 27 back to the family farm. It's early in the morning, and the father is drinking coffee on the front porch in his rocking chair. He sees a figure walking up the lane in the fog. He recognizes the gate. He springs from his chair and jumps off the porch and almost falls flat on his face. He runs down the lane and grabs his son in a big bear hug. The son starts. I know I've disappointed you, Dad. I'm ashamed of myself. I'm not asking to be part of the family. I just need a job and a place to stay. But his dad's not listening. He shouts to his workers, slaughter the prized calf and start the barbecue. He calls to another, my son's cold. Grab my new coat and boots that I just got from Amazon. They should fit him. Let's celebrate. He calls his sister on his cell phone and tells her to get her band together and come over that evening. Why? Her nephew has come back home. They're going to have a big party, going to celebrate. The older son has been mending fences on the back 40, hard work. He's exhausted. It's just getting dark as he nears the house. He sees all the lights on in his parents' home. There are lots of people inside and outside the house, and lights are strung between the trees in the yard. Even above the noise of his John Deere ATV, he can hear music. He stops and turns off the ATV. People are laughing and dancing. One of the workers is coming out of the house. The older son gets off the ATV and yells, what's going on? Your brother has come home, and your dad is throwing a big party. He barbecued the calf you were going to take to the state fair. Your aunt's band is playing. There are all kinds of food, a big cake and bowls of punch. It's great. The older brother's in shock. What? The worker repeats, your brother has come home. I heard you the first time. I just can't believe it. Then he shakes his head and says to the hired hand, you better go back and join the party. You don't want to miss out on any of the food or fun. If my dad asks where I am, tell him I'm working, like always. The furious older son heads to the barn. Before long, his father comes out to get him. The older son is busy mucking out the stalls. When he sees his father, the older son says, "I hear you're celebrating, Dad, because your deadbeat son is back. What does he want now? My half of the estate?" His father says, "Look, son, I know you're angry, but I never thought we'd see your brother again. It's like he's brought back from the dead." The son responds, "So let me get this straight. Your son takes half of what you own and wastes it all on booze, gambling, drugs, and prostitutes in Brazil. I know because I saw his Facebook page. Now he returns empty-handed, wanting you to help him, and you throw him a party. But I, on the other hand, have worked faithfully on this farm all my life, and you never once threw me a party or did anything special like that for me. Don't you think I have a right to be angry? It's like my years of sweat and blood don't mean anything, like I don't matter to you at all." His father counters, "Of course you matter. You're all I have. We work together every day on this farm to make it a success. All this is yours. But we had to celebrate. We thought your brother was dead, but he's alive. He had lost his way, but he has come home. Won't you come in and celebrate with us?" The story tells of God's grace, a grace that boggles our minds. Divine mercy toward us extends beyond our comprehension. It's incredible the way God always welcomes us back, no matter what we have done. Both sons disappointed their father. The younger son, by his self-centeredness, his disrespect for his father, and wasting half his father's assets, and the older by not accepting his brother. We all disappoint God in one way or another. We, the church, are called to act like the loving Father in our story. We're not to be in the business of judging and rejecting others, but in the ministry of acceptance, always offering grace, love, and mercy to those who are willing to come back. A mother called to her son and shouted, "Johnny, tell your sister to get in the house out of the rain." "I can't, Mom," came the reply. "And just why can't you?" his mother demanded. "Because we are playing Noah's Ark, Mom, and she's one of the sinners." "Wouldn't that mean we'd all have to stay out in the cold rain?" Jesus says those of us who are already in the house and drying ourselves off should invite those who are out in the rain to come into the house. When they enter soaking wet, we're to embrace them with a warm towel and welcome them home. Thanks be to God for the grace that is given to all of us. Each of us is welcome to come home to a loving God, no matter what we've done. Jesus gave his life so that we might know the grace and mercy of our loving God, and so we might share the grace of God with everyone else. Amen.